All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. This Monday morning, October 6th. Good to see everybody here. For the just joining that we're in the morning prayers, this is our last stream for well over a week and a half, because I will be traveling to Southern California for next weekend's Diocesan Days, visit friends and family, etc. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna have access to the internet. It's a good time just to unplug from the internet too. Visit people, um, and family, and just be present. And so, yeah, I'm logging off. Visit my spiritual father. Get some surfing in. Remember we watched surf clips? Was that last stream that we did that? Getting all pumped. Do some surfing. I wish I did better building my upper body just to get ready. Um, it's a good question. How do I prove that spiration is a hypostatic property by the early church fathers? Um, like how early? I mean, you probably have it as early as, I mean, Saint Basil and Saint Gregory Palamas. Like that's where you want to go. Also, the Creed. Um, Trying to think earlier than that. Yes. Who's they? All right, where was I? I always get so distracted. Something about traveling. Oh yeah, I my taxes are off. Got that done. Got all my coursework for all my students all set up for the rest of the week, so I don't have to. I teach in person tomorrow. After tomorrow classes, then um, I'll be flying out. So I wanted to make sure everything was set up. And oh, I don't even know if I'd argue with the Roman Catholic, unless I don't know how far advanced you are in your studies and faith, but I probably, but yeah, it's in Basil, St. Gregory Nazianzus, like uh St. Maximus. um Here's a good question. Why is it pushed that priests get married? Well, it didn't necessarily push, but if you're a celibate priest, you're going to be a monastic. So it just depends where God's calling you. um, but monastery life is very different than, you are whatever you are once you're ordained. Like you can't change after. So if you're if you're single and you're ordained, you're going to become a monk. Like they that's the prescribed and like we talked about before, monastic life is very different than parish life. So occasionally there might be a rare exception of bringing a kind of monastic, a higher monk um, into a parish too, but it's not ideal. I mean, it's a family for crying out loud, but the parish is priests who are married and have children and stuff. Like that's the the ideal for a parish life. That's how it works. No, women. I don't know if they're allowed. Like what? I don't know how that is. Like, are they allowed? I think probably it's loosened, or they can come to the church. They're not allowed to commune. You're not allowed to commune either if you cut your if you're bleeding on your hand. Um, like if you to be honest, if you cut yourself on your hand, you'd probably be asked to leave the liturgy because it's a bloodless sacrifice. We're not to mix to have blood um in the liturgical service during. So yeah, the Matushka, it's just a healthy, we're a family. I mean, think about it. A family, a wider family, and, with a father, the priest, uh, the priest's wife. And so, yeah, it's just, yep. Haven't heard what? You cut yourself? Like, I've cut myself. I had to leave when I was in California. People think that the time of month it's like, oh, they're impure. It's like, no, it's blood. It's you can't mix that into the bloodless sacrifice, like the worship service for um now if you have a small cut in your mouth, like don't get like autistic and Talmudic over, but like how much it's like you generally know if you have active bleeding, right? Um you're supposed to leave the you're not supposed to. You're certainly not allowed to commune. I remember in California, I was cutting the prosphora before the service, and I cut my finger, and it started acting like it was bleeding, and my spiritual father was like, "You're out of the altar." Not a punishment. It's just you can't mix blood with a bloodless sacrifice. Like, didn't you, Anthony? Didn't I answer your question? Basil, Saint Gregory of Nyssa, Saint Gregory Nazianzus, Saint Maximus. Um, go look up. Both Jay and David have really good videos on that. The Shinsky book as well. Um, there's just general arguments too that I think the easiest argument to prove it is persons are not relations. Relations are not things and entities. So the Roman Catholic view is wrong. Like persons are relations of opposition, but like that philosophically doesn't make any sense. So therefore, each person is defined by their hypostatic property. So they're a person in and of themselves. They're not a relation. That's the easiest kind of refutation of. Well, I think if you cut yourself before it's probably going to stop bleeding by. But if you cut yourself in the liturgy, yeah, you're supposed to leave the. You're not going to commune. That's for sure. Yeah, think about it. It's bloodless sacrifice. Why would you mix blood in the offering of a bloodless like then it's a violation of the liturgy. Coffee's here. I already drank it. Mm-mm-mm. You can have unmarried priests. It perishes. It's just rare, but occasionally it happens. The ideal and the kind of is usually a married priest with children. And remember, don't get Talmudic about the like. Obviously, actively bleeding like a large amount, but like you don't want to get Talmudic and be like, how much is too much? Like, I think that's the questions. If you have questions, just ask your priest. Like when. And they're the ones that actually make the decision whether you like. For example, I've had to take medicine before and go to the priest and say, Father, I had to take some medicine, uh, either a really bad headache or a spot. Obviously, I had to get a blessing when I had broken my ankle, and I had to ask. And the priest makes a decision, like, yes, you can. How do you prove the argument from the contrary isn't incredulity? Because because it's a valid has nothing to do whether you believe it or not. The For example, disjunctive syllogism is a valid deductive argument. That's how it has nothing to do whether you can understand it or something like that. Um, and it becomes pretty clear to the difference between I don't understand something or I can't believe versus how words are defined. Like it'd be like saying, how do we know that she's either pregnant or not pregnant? How is that not an argument from incredulity? It's like because that's has not it's not even in the same category. It should be apparent. I don't know how you help somebody if they're that far out that they're confusing and thinking the opposite categories, uh, pregnant and not pregnant, may be in the domain of well, maybe I just don't understand. I don't think there's much you could say. Like somebody's that fundamentally retarded. Like I probably wouldn't talk to. I'd be like, I knew the whole thing with blood, all the autism was gonna peak in the. It depends what if you have a cut in your mouth or a tiny cut, like obviously not. Like let's just get rid. If it's actively bleeding, why is that a hard thing to understand? I don't get it. Yes, if you're actively bleeding, it disqualifies you from partaking of the Eucharist because then it's not a bloodless sacrifice. You're mixing blood with a bloodless sacrifice. But a paper cut or a cut from the night before that isn't actively. You guys get what I'm saying, right? Like, Oh. That's what explains why women who earn their time a month are not communing during. It's not because it's a God's curse and they're it's because of the act of bleeding. Like, all right, let's see if there are any more super chats. Every single time that somebody's like, "Was this paperclip looks red? Was this?" It's like, it is interesting though. Usually, you're not told about like that. I don't know why. Oh, smokes! Elk Park, which is the area we're driving south down to Butte for church. This is like a flat area right before you go down to Butte. 11 degrees this morning. I think it was 25 here in Helena. And I'm leaving, and then it heats up. The bad thing is that the apartment complex, they they shut the air conditioner off at this time of year because people break the air conditioners if it's too cold. You got to run it a certain, but it inevitably happens. It gets cold, and then you get a week where it jumps back up again. No, I think I know everybody in the chat. I don't think I have any troll. I just people just never heard about that. I don't know why it's not taught. Maybe it's a good question. All right, what else is going on? Oh, Lord. Where is this? I don't even know if I want to cover political stuff. It's just all so tiresome. Yeah, it's not really brought up in. Yeah, the Antiochian House of Studies has my catechesis listed in. It's a catechesis continuing. So it's for inquirers, catechumens, and those continuing. They actually listed it as a reference to in their seminary program. So that's cool. Um, Father Paul came up. Father Paul comes up. He's a priest in the Serbian diocese in San Diego, and he comes up to help at the mission parish here. And they just got back from Manathos. And I've never been, I couldn't go. Like, the times I've been invited, it's always during, like, I mean, technically I could take the school, but it's impossible to catch up if I take off too much time from work. And so I can never make it. Um, but he did mention, yeah, you need to talk to somebody. It was his first time. He said they did it wrong. Although there were priests there, that's going to make it a bit different. Um, but I don't know if it was too rushed, he said, or they just felt like they were tourists. And so I think right planning needs to kind of go into that. So talk to somebody who's experienced at going there, and they'll probably tell you that how to avoid certain mistakes and get the most out of that experience. I'm not the person to ask. What other questions? I don't know anything about Atlanta area other than I have a dear friend in the Romanian parish, Father George, but I've never been to Atlanta. I think I've stopped in the airport before, but like I have no idea what goes on in Atlanta or Georgia for that matter. So, couldn't tell you. Speaking of Mount Athos, we have Abbot Methodius coming out to the monastery. We already have Papa Ephraim here has been here for 2 3 weeks, and I think we have 12 candidates. It's not open invitation. You can't just come to the monastery. You have to register. You have to be vetted. We have to see. We're only taking serious people, not people. Oh, I just like to talk to the abbot. His um his schedule's packed. People cannot just show up to the monastery. Again, you have to register. They're vetted, and then I think we have about 12 candidates that will be interviewed. Um, that's the 23rd, so we're really excited about that. I just can't believe after all this time we have a monastery up and running. I just like things are gonna blow up in very good ways here in Montana, and God's already blessed the conference, and has put Montana on the map. So we're really excited about that. So pray for those men and for the abbot and for the monastery. Uh, or other there was something else I wanted to talk. Can't remember. All right, I'm looking for news topics. Oh, this is interesting. I like this quote. If you remember, couple years ago, I did I think it was the men's retreat, the Montanica. I think it was like 3 years ago. We did two conferences that summer. One just the normal Orthodox Montanica, and then the other one was the men's retreat. And I had done a paper on hyperdoxy, orthospurgism, and hyperreligiosity is the unholy trinity pitfalls for your faith. And I remember using this quote: a Christian should avoid unhealthy religiosity. And I would say that too, it's not just a feeling of superiority due to virtue or inferiority. I mean, we certainly see that. Like, you see people, oh, there's no hope for me. I'm the worst. No, I'm the worst sinner. I've seen that on. It's like, to just knock it off. Like, stop telling everybody how you're the worst. I don't know if I can make it. It's like, I guarantee you're not like, we clergy. I remember this one time, I'm like, well, were you a male prostitute or something? Like, were you a murderer? Did you work for the mob? No, but I'm like, well, okay, like, then there's people a lot worse that had worse lives. Were you a serial killer or something? Like, what? You know, those are distractions. But I would also say the kind of rigorism of, and by the way, all these people do this stuff by themselves. That's how you know something's going wrong. They're prescribing what prayers they should read, how much, what fasting, rather than their priest or spiritual father doing that. And you can burn out. Again, the whole reason why we do the asceticism is not to prove to God or ourselves that, like, or add up merits or something like that. It's to acquire virtues. It's to ontologically become more than what we were. And you can get hurt if you do too much. That's why it's the priest that's going to go, we're going to start you off here. Well, I have so much zeal and rigor. It's like, you're going to crash and burn. It's not pleasing to God that you do more. I think there's a quote from a saint: God's more pleased with consistency and small, genuine prayers than hours and hours of. So that's a good reminder there. Let the physician, your priest, and your coach, your spiritual trainer, guide you in a plan. Don't be making up, and then don't talk about it. Don't talk about your fasting. Don't talk about, I'm the worst, I'm the fail. Like, just put one foot in front of each other. Be humble. Don't be prideful. Stick with the prayers too. There's prayers, like the pre-communion prayers. I'm not worthy, but your love for mankind, exceeds all, no matter how great our sins are. Like, those are great. Just say that, but you don't need to vocalize that and let everybody know I'm the worst person. Like, or look how good I'm. Like, stop talking about it. Just do your work. That's humility. Yeah, don't become OO. By the way, the critiques, actually, without even getting into the theology, first of all, they're philosophically incorrect. They have an inability to distinguish nature and person, which is what leads them. It's the same mistake Nestorius does. He just goes the other way. Um, so we could go into the philosophically an error, like how they understand what person is. Number two, um, there's no official energies doctrine. Like, you might have some who are like, oh, I believe, like, it's not part of their theology though. So that's huge, major problems. Number three, what Jay and others brought up is true. That actually is an ethnophilic ethnic club. Their ethnicity comes before their faith, generally speaking. And I have friends that, like, you know, I'm sure he would tell you to become Oriental Orthodox, but I have a friend who's in it and he struggles. Like, I see it all the time. The fact that he's, a white American dude, and he's extremely frustrating. Number three, they're not really synodal. Like, they're only kind of connected, the various Orientals, by a common theology of monophysitism. They may call it meophysitism, but it reduces to monophysitism. Um, so there's that. Um, they reject the rest of the, like, they don't have within their theology the ecumenical councils 5, 6, and 7, 8, and 9. So there's that. Like, I just don't know why anybody would want to be part of that. Um, there was another point I was going to make. I don't know how unification would happen. There are those. I split the Orientals in two groups, those that are actually theologically heretics and those that aren't. Those where it does just come down to an issue of language. Those are the ones that are happy to accept an assent to the Fifth Ecumenical Council, which is a clarification on Chalcedon. Theologically, they're fine. Like, the problem is, what do they do with saints that are condemned? They're saints, like Severus of Antioch. So go watch David's video, Jay's, like, I would say Orthodox Shahada. I mean, we've thoroughly refuted. Their best guy is like a 21-year-old or something like that, that doesn't. It's just. To me, it's a no brainer why anybody would. Yeah, Maronites are sketchy. Their whole history. Never heard of the Maronites? Look it up. And Colby, I'm saying that the Orientals, I think they're divided. Like when these meanings came together, right? To There were those that were willing to accept the fifth ecumenical, which is the clarification of Chalcedon, in which it did look like, okay, well, you're just having an issue with the words. You're fine with the concepts. You're fine. Like theologically, we could accept that. Those who reject that wouldn't. So there are two different groups. So there's still schism. I just say one group's theologically heretical and the other's not. Like if they're willing to accept the Fifth Ecumenical Council. All right. Other questions? Priorities given to super chats, questions, and no super chats. No more. All right. Let's see what else is going on in the world. I'm excited about writing this paper, although I doubt I'm going to get much writing done it's interesting. I actually book for 6 days because it's just impossible to get everything. Even I'm just jam packing my itinerary and schedule. Even 6 days. People are coming like, "Can I meet with you?" I was like, even then. But can you imagine only going like 2 days? It just. Oh, I just saw something. All right. Delete, delete, delete. Delete, delete, delete. Delete, delete, delete. Okay, closing this. A million tabs. To whom it may concern, $4.99. DA, how would you respond to the tag rejection paradigm? What does that mean? Oh, well, I think I got it. I got this. If we look, often I'll do this with somebody's argument. Like, what do you think? Like, what is it people think are necessary ingredients for knowledge? Like, what would exclude? Could you have a paradigm that contradicts itself? Um, they'd be like, no. Then I'd be like, all right. So we've got some qualifications of things that don't count. Um, Coherency is not simply a lack of contradiction. Coherency is not. It's more like logical consistency. Like, so I could have a bunch of. I could make up some system that has a bunch of true propositions, but they're not logically connected. Like the trees in my system, trees are biological. The Earth has a sun. Triangles are three-sided geometrical figure. All those are true trees, but they're not coherent. There's no logical connection between the truth of one and the other. So when people talk about coherency, there's a logical entailment and relation between various things. Okay, so that would just be one ingredient that one would want. Be like, yeah, generally, if you have some justified, some sort of paradigm, that's something everybody wants. So it isn't simply if it's coherent, therefore it's a justification. It's just one among many elements. So that's how you answer it. Yeah, because coherency itself doesn't say if it maps onto the world. I could just have some abstract. That's why part of tag is it's talking about history. God actually revealed himself to man. There were prophets, there were miracles, there were saints, and we look at that and we go, well, does it match? So if I have competitors saying, oh, no, no, we're the true faith, well, it's like, well, how could it be if your faith was created in the 1800s? Like it doesn't match up to. So it's not simply logical coherence that it's is it historical? Is it capable to be objectively uh, publicly verified in history empirically? Um, is it the sort of kind of story in which that would make sense? A God who's personal, who's in a position, not only a position to know, but a position to reveal. Um, Gives an account of how all these things work, right? If about logic, well, because there's a divine energies doctrine. He creates for universals, because logic's about universals and forms and stuff like that. It's like, well, okay, so I don't know how many you want to list, but it's not simply, oh, is it coherent, right? It's the whole thing. And nothing even comes close to that. That's the thing. Like, and all you need is one to show that another system, like for example, if you make a claim that all swans are white, you don't have to um, go through everything to show that's false. All you have to do is show that here's a swan that's not white. And it's really easy to. I just I boil it down to there's only a couple options. So Jesus Christus totos. What's the either your um either it's revelatory theism, God reveals, or it's autonomous. You figure this stuff out by yourself in your own mind. But the problem with autonomous epistemology is that it admits that a personal God who reveals might not be possible. But what would that category be? If the one category is there's a story about a personal God, the triad, who's personal and reveals, and what he reveals is there's intention that stands behind because God has a mind. He created these things that sustains them according to his divine ideas. The opposite of that is accidentalism. Accidentalism is a defeater for knowledge. There's no accidental. You can't explain even what the term means, knowledge, from a principle of that which it necessarily rejects, namely accident. So it must be revelatory theism. Therefore, even autonomous epistemology that later tries to prove the existence of God is still self-refuting because it admits the possibility that the necessary condition is not necessary, i.e., accidentalism is possible. Furthermore, to be person means a necessary relation to another person. Can't be a dyad, it has to be a triad, so it's a trinity, right? Furthermore, only orthodoxy has the divine energies, so How is it that I relate to an opposite category, something that's transcendent, and I'm not, I'm immanent? I'd have to rely on autonomous epistemology again to work out causally and get to how does God reveal? He reveals through his divine energy. So now you have orthodoxy. You have Trinity, everything else is ruled out. It's pretty easy. Like, it's not a hard. And it's revealed. How do we know? Because it's revealed. Like, that's. Well, there's no necessity in force, just a repeat of. It's just. There's nothing for ads that explains. And so you'd have superfluousness in God. You have monad, dyad, and triad. Any multiplication beyond that is just superfluous. So does that sound like perfection? Like perfection complete, like God has stuff that's not needed, like in virtue of himself, needed in, like, yeah, 4 is twice 2, or it's 1 and 3. So it's just. If God is necessary and 4 is not, an addition to the Trinity is not necessary, then God's both necessary and not necessary. So it's a contradiction. Yeah. So God can't be 4, 5, 6, 7. Stephen DeYoung's good. My wife's reading. Forgot to read this. Sick of 499. Is there any source or sources that deal with OCA, OC, UOC for discerning? I can't off the top of my head. So you know that one of them's a schismatic group, the Ukrainian. The other one is the kind of historic Ukrainian church. I don't know why you'd be bringing the OCA up, but they're not involved with that. I'd say go to Father John Whiteford. He usually deals the most with. He's kind of the. I know Father Zachariah Lynch as well on the OCU versus UOC stuff and the stuff with the patriarch. You can look at the State Department's funding of this and trying to establish some of the geopolitical issues. But that's the OCA is not really involved with that, so I don't. And don't go to the schismatic if there's one that, right. The whole story is that, and I always get the two confused. Just look it up. Uh, you had a defraud for sexual issues actually. When it was under when it was connected to Russia, the Moscow Patriarch defrocked Denisenko and some others, and then the State Department and the UN and NATO and all the usual suspects got involved, started funding and putting pressure on the ecumenical patriarch. We know that they received millions of dollars to push this and do this. And then, uncanonically, because the only person, if somebody's defrocked, the only person that could fix that and redo it is the the bishop would be frocked. So unilaterally, the EP steps in and starts asserting, well, no, we're the papacy of the East, and so we can do whatever we want. And now I'm gonna actually make this defrock bishop a bishop and establish a State Department UN schismatic church full of NAZIs, and they're basically like brown shirts, like um, the legitimate Ukrainian Orthodox Church is being these people are being killed and locked up, beaten up. Their church is destroyed. So you basically have one that's an illegitimate canonical entity that's basically a schismatic, that's a weaponized institution of the Ukraine, the U.S. State Department, and UN, NATO. And the other one's the historic Ukrainian church that's being persecuted. That's all you basically need to know. But like, yeah, go to Father John Whiteford, Father Zachariah Lynch. They probably stay most up to date with all that stuff. All right, do we have other super chats? Yes. Janos, £5.99. I recently struggled with this objection. If free will is not luck or predetermined wills, then what is it, and why are we to blame for our actions? Well, I just put it back. Why would I think the only categories are luck or randomness and things being predetermined? Isn't that begging the question? I mean, somebody would have to prove that. And if they proved it, it would just be either accidental or determined and be a defeater for knowledge anyways. So they're just... Yeah, and the moral objection would be, well, if it's accidental, if it's just luck, I'm obviously can't be morally accountable for things that are not in my control. So if we think about in terms of both moral action and epistemic, it requires responsibility. I'm responsible in a world that's either luck, accident, like there's no responsibility that I didn't do that. I'm not an agent. I'm neither an epistemic nor a moral agent. So there's no knowledge. Without responsibility and agency, there's no either knowledge or moral accountability. And certainly with being determined, that's the other category. It's like, it's not me. I'm not a moral epistemic agent if I'm determined to. So it's self-defeating. It's a great, easy argument to... Jesus already answered that question. I gave definitive justification. It's revealed. It's the only system that gives everything that everybody would want that no other system could. Divine energies, personhood, triad, all the necessary. That gives an account for the appearances, how things in a logically and consistent way. One that can account for logic, how it comes about, how we're able to know it. It is also logically consistent. It provides justificatory force. Nothing else does it. So it's either that or not. Either you're just going to be a radical skeptic, or, well, I now have something that everybody wants that no other position can. Also, it's verified in history, publicly, objectively, that matches everything that's said in the faith. So that's it. Pretty easy. Aristotle has a great argument. What do we mean by luck? um, or chance, it's a great argument that basically the word chance and luck already imply intention, mind. So he gives a story, and Aristotle's notorious for like, what would we mean by that word? How do we use it? And then um, he says, okay, well, think about this. You have a mind and you have an attention. You have, let's say it's payday, and you have attention to do something with the money that you have, and that's go to the agora or the market and buy something. Now, of course, there's lots of other things as an agent with a mind that you could order with an intention to do stuff, but at that moment, you're going to take the money to the market and get groceries. He says, and then by chance you run into your landlord, who you also own money to. And by chance, it goes to the landlord instead of. But notice that's only in terms that there's already a prior intention. Something else happened that I wasn't intending. So non-intention means chance or is non-intention. But it doesn't mean that that's even conceived the meaning of that in a purely non-intentional world, but rather in terms of a derivation of intention. So it already proves chance and accident and luck already prove intention. It just means I was intending for this to happen and something else happened that I didn't want or wasn't intending. It's a great argument. I wouldn't get too hung up on the JTB. Do you need a perfect definition of knowledge? So the question isn't about does knowledge exist? Can we roughly define it, you know, without appealing to any like particular theory of knowledge to know what we're talking about. So does it have to? I wouldn't even worry about like JTB and like. Do you generally know what's being talked about when we say we know something with regards to God? Are the problems with JTB the definite? Yeah, but doesn't mean there's a problem that the knowledge doesn't exist. It's just nailing down a perfect definition of it is difficult. No, divine energies are not synchronicities. Totally different. I mean, you might. Everything that has existence has it through the divine energy. So even synchronicity, like synchronicity, seems to be more God's will and intention to put certain things together. Yeah, and I talk about this whole chance things in Dr. Timothy Patisse's work that what does he say? Chance is, from our view, a hazy. It's an inability to kind of see the divine providence from our view. But there is, I mean, Aristotle proved there's no such thing. It's semantically and logically impossible to have pure chance or luck because it already, the word implies a world of intention, mind, agents, and stuff like that. And that is in, look where it's both in the physics and the metaphysics. You guys can look this up. I don't have to do everything for you. Just type in, don't you know how to use a search engine? Type in where Aristotle talks about chance and let's see if we got other super chats. And then on for the luck versus predeterminate argument, remember we've done a whole stream on, I'll plug it in, but it's J.P. Moreland's An Explanation of the Defense of Free Thinking argument. Read that, a sufficient refutation of all this nonsense here. Put that in the chat. Just I have a whole like, it's probably in one of the footnotes of my paper. It's like a 21. It won't do, like, these people, they're not going to accept it. It's the problem isn't, well, I just saw every premise. I did it. I listed, like, there was like 21 premises where I went through every possible option and eliminated it. And they're still crying and complaining about. I think you just generally try to understand what I was saying about only orthodoxy provides everything that everybody wants that nobody else can pull off. Like, that's as easy as how can truth, you know what, I'm going to read you something. You want a definitive, I'm going to read, it's just so good. St. Justin Popovich. This pretty much will cover everything, and it's written so well. I'm going to read this to you. This is such St. Justin Popovich on the theory of knowledge from St. Isaac the Syrian. Once you generally understand this, you need to see the general picture. Don't get caught up in the autism, the left brain kind of watch piece and how do I know 3 versus 4, and you're missing the epistemic forest for the epistemic trees. If you're looking here, and that's what left brain is the piecemeal analytic, you're not actually seeing what's being said. Like, this is what I'm saying to people. You're not actually listening to what's meant. Like, accidentalism is impossible. So you need to generally take like a 30,000 foot vista and look at like what's generally going on, what's qualitatively different between these stories, right? Once you get that, all the pieces come into view. But I'm going to read you this. It's just so good. In European philosophy, because that's what we're going to have, like, you have the story of revelation, and then you have philosophy. Why is it that nobody else's philosophies are working? Why can't it provide justification? In principle, we'll never be able to do it. And it's explained here. In European philosophy, man always appears to a greater or lesser extent a fragmented being. Nowhere is he seen a whole. Truth is a whole. How do I know where the pieces go? I just actually told you, too, that when you're down in the pieces asking piecemeal, what's an exhaustive list, a definitive, like, you don't know, you don't have the picture of the jigsaw puzzle. You don't know where the pieces go. You don't even know if those pieces even belong in the... That is what everything that's not orthodoxy is doing. Everything's fragmented, broken apart, and can't be seen as a whole. Even man himself. Nowhere is he seen as complete and integrated, but always broken and fragmented. There is no philosophical system in which man is not broken up into parts that would defeat the attempt of any thinker to put them together into a single whole. Again, if you don't see the whole, if you're a fragmented part, how do you put it together in a whole? When you're fragmented, you don't actually see the mosaic, the picture, you can't actually put knowledge back together again. because you're not a whole. So let's look at the different views. On one hand, realism brings man down to the level of senses, and through the senses to things, to matter, so on, that man's no longer his own master, but scattered among things. On the other hand, so by realism, the kind of particularly empiricism and stuff like that, you have on the other hand, rationalism separates man from his understanding, and we definitely see this. Knowledge is just defined as what? Literally nothing to do with reality. So you have realism on one thing that's reductive, and you're just reduced to your senses and matter, or rationalism that's abstract. Truth is now just it's just a function of propositions. And what's the argument? How do I know that I've listed every premise? It's like, do you not see it's total nonsense? Abstract propositions in of themselves are just fantasies between your two ears. There's no understanding. Oh, it's my axiomatic system, you see. Rationalism separates man from his understanding, seeing the latter as the chief fount of truth and the highest measure of all that is, attributing all worth to it, making it an attribute and idolizing it. While at the same time, belittling the other psychic and physical powers of man. Critical thought, for its part, is little more than an apologia for rationalism and sensualism that drags the understanding in man with it down to the level of senses. As for pantheism, so notice what St. Justin Popovich is doing. He's actually presenting a transcendental argument here. The impossibility of the contrary. Let's look where every single possibility and see how it's a defeater for knowledge. It's a defeater of man, knowledge, the world. That's what he's doing. So what about pantheism and all other monastic systems? So notice he's like, okay, well, what are the other options? Pantheism and monism. They regard the world and man as a mass of contradictory opposites, which can never be brought into a single logical unity. All of these philosophical systems have the same result: a superficial, phenomenalist understanding of both man and of the world. The man of phenomenalist philosophy is always relativistic, so there we've got these reduced to relativism. How are you going to justify that knowledge exists, the world and everything, if it all reduces to relativism? Or contradictory, like monism. It reduces to relativism. Is man without a central focal point? Where does the world stand? And where does man? What is the foundation of intellect and of knowledge? Man tries to explain himself in terms of things. So all of these philosophies, all these religions are doing the exact same thing, but with a total lack of success. For by explaining himself in terms of things, man in the end is reduced to a thing himself, to matter. However much he may struggle to do so, the man of the phenomenalist philosophy is in no position to testify to the objective reality of things. What do I always say in TAG? No epistemic stand. You are not in a position to know. We have St. Justin Popovich saying the exact same thing. Still less is he able to show that things possess truth. See, this is the problem with you guys. Why are you granting your opponent, saying, how do we know this is true? Why are you even granting them that? They're not in a position to show they possess truth, the propositions possess truth, or the world possess truth, that the world's truth directed. Don't give it to them. You're literally giving them the rope that they can hang you with. And they have no justification for that. I just don't understand why you do that. By attempting to explain man by man, philosophy achieves a bizarre result. It presents a mirror image of a mirror image. In the last analysis, and by the way, this is autonomous epistemology. Such philosophy, whatever its path, is centered on matter and on man. And one thing falls from all this. What is it? The impossibility of the contrary. The impossibility of any true knowledge of man in the world. Once you've shown that, don't give it to him. Well, let me just have that so I can make an argument against orthodoxy. We just showed you the impossibility of any true knowledge of man in the world. I'm not going to give you what you can't actually do so you can attempt to refute orthodoxy. The result compels the philosophical spirit of man to make conjectures. Exactly. Well, what if forms? What if Plato was? What if Mormonism were true? You can't be serious. Through idealism, he takes a leap to the supernatural. Oh, I'm going to be idealist, you see. But this leap in turn leads to skepticism, for the philosophical idealism regards man as a meta-empirical reality can neither be described nor proven. Yeah, congratulations. Another made-up story that can't be justified. Man is understood in the relativist philosophy is subject to a tragic destiny, for he has demonstrated that truth transcends both man and matter. There is an unbridgeable gulf between man and truth. Man is on one side of this gulf and can find no way of getting to the other, where transcendent truth is to be found. But the power of truth from the other side responds to the powerlessness of man on the other side. Transcendent truth crosses the gulf. So what have we realized? There's a gulf. I can't do it. So don't let people pretend that they did it. Acknowledge, take the humble position and be like, it's impossible. But now guess what? We're in a radically different category. This is why I say you're all looking for an argument that proves it's not an argument. As Russ Mannion says, there's no purely rational argument for theism. There's only a theistic account of rationality, and the account is radically different. Then people do what? They asked me to put it in the exact same category that was just shown to be impossible. They can't do it. Yeah, but how does you prove that? It's like do you see that you're asking the wrong questions? And that's what I'm going to actually say. I'm not going to answer them on their own terms. I'll be like, because the question's wrong. You're looking at it wrong. It's not another argument among arguments. It's a radically different. But how does it how does it solve the problem of criteria? It's like, you're an idiot. Like, do you not understand what I'm saying? There is no autonomous philosophical or even verbal explanation of the problem of criterion. Well, then how's your position? It's not another position. You can't, it's something radically different. And it's either that or nothing. You can't see that simple. Do you know that grade school kids can get this? It's not an IQ. It's because all of you trained yourself to think incorrectly about the world. In the left brain, you're not actually seeing and hearing what's actually being said. Yeah, but what about the problem of Christ? How does it solve the... Well, what theory of knowledge is it? J2? You're missing you're asking all the wrong questions. You're not seeing the bigger picture here. It's impossible, and we have a totally radically different story, and it's either that or nothing. So no, there is, as Russ says, there's no purely rational argument that proves orthodoxy. There's only an orthodox account of rationality. The power... Oh, there's an unbridgeable gulf between man and truth. If you can't see that, don't go any further. Because you're not going to get the quote-unquote argument of tag. If you can't realize the predicament that we're in, that man is on one side of the gulf, can find no way of getting out to the other, where transcendent truth, you're not going to get anything further being explained to you. Dwell in that. Look at the picture where we're at. But the power of truth from the other side responds to the powerless man on this. Well, how do we prove that? You missed the whole question. Again, you're back in the quagmire. So we got to go back to ground zero to the first point again, because you missed, again, wrong question. Transcendent truth crosses the gulf, arrives on our side, it reveals itself. Here it is, revelatory theism. Same argument that I'm making. Himself. It's not a form, it's not an object, it's not an essence. Himself, it's a person. In the person of Christ, the God-man. In him, transcendent truth becomes immanent in man. No, nothing else can explain that. The God, other than orthodoxy. Consistently, coherently. The God-man reveals the truth in and through himself. And again, it's not going to be an abstract argument that's going to get... It's a person. I keep trying to tell you this. You're going to have a personal encounter where it's revealed, and your sickness of your mind and soul are going to be healed, and you're going to get it. You're going to see it immediately and be like, it's the only thing. And it's genuine knowledge. It's true gnosis. The God-man reveals the truth in and through himself. He reveals it. Oh, how? Yeah, but what premise? How do we prove? You're back to square one again. You missed it. So we'll go back to square one. We're not moving past the first point until you get it. And I'll keep repeating over and over again. Not through thought or reason. Not another argument. It's not autonomous epistemology. By the life. Your problem is you've disconnected yourself from the life source. This is why you're not getting it. This is why children in grade school can immediately get it. Because they're open. They're still connected. They haven't been brainwashed so much and done all the sins that make them incapable of seeing and knowing stuff. It's a life that's his. It's Christ. He not only has the truth, he himself is the truth. In him being truth are one. Therefore, he, in his person, not only defines truth, but shows the way to it. He who abides in him will know truth, and the truth will make him free. So, anybody asking these questions, you're a slave. You're blind. You're sick. The problem isn't, oh, I'll just give you a logical argument, and how can you read and understand what's being said if you're blind and sick, and you're a slave to sin, falsehood, and death? You need to be freed. Do you think some propositional argument, deductive argument, is going to fix that? Is it going to save you? Is it going to... from death and sin? No. It's a person. It's in the person of the God-man. God and man are indissolubly united. Man's understanding is not overthrown. It's not fideism. It's renewed by the renewing of the mind, Scripture says. That's why I always said tag is not an argument. It's the gospel. What does the gospel say? By the renewing of the mind. Purification. Sanctification. It's deepened and divinized and made capable of grasping truths of life in the light of the God-man. And by the way, none of this is going to be possible without the energies you can't explain. Only orthodoxy has that. So quit fighting it. It's so ridiculous looking to watch people ask these questions and struggle. It's like, the problem is, as some new statistics came out, 90% of people report not introspect. Of course you can't get the argument. The problem is you can't look inward. You can't see the bigger picture. You're operating in a deficient right brain and a left brain. You're blind. And it requires introspection. And 90% of people reported not to be able to do not introspecting at any deep level. In the God-man, absolute truth has in its entirety been given real in a personal way. Look at the testimony of orthodoxy. It's personal, it's historically verifiable, and it's in Jesus Christ. This is why he alone, among those born of earth, both has the integral knowledge. That's why I say, who has epistemic standing? Who's in a position to know? finite, blind man that's piecemeal and fragmented and can't justify even that knowledge exists? No, he, Christ alone, has integral knowledge of truth and can hand it on. The man who desires to know the truth has only to be made one with God-man, to become one flesh with him, to become a member of his divine and human body, the church. Becoming such, man acquires the mind of Christ, thinking, living, feeling in Christ, and thus coming to an integral knowledge of truth. For the man in Christ, listen to this, the antinomies of the mind, that every philosophy, the one and the many that can't get over, are not irreconcilable opposites. They're simple ruptures caused by the upheaval of original sin in man. Uniting himself to Christ, man feels in himself a coming together of fragmented parts, a healing of the intellect, a wholeness and integration that make him capable of integrated understanding. Truth is objectively given in the person of Christ, a God-man. It's historically objectively verifiable as well. But the way in which this becomes subjective, so notice the antinomies, objective or subjective, what's resolved in orthodoxy, and only in orthodoxy. I've never heard of anybody that actually, paradigm that could reconcile the antinomies. They become reconciled. The practical side of the Christian theory of knowledge was fully developed by the fathers, those experienced holy evangelical philosophers. Among the most outstanding of these holy philosophers was the great ascetic St. Isaac the Syrian. In his writings, with a rare understanding based on experience, he traces the process of healing and purification of man's organs of knowledge, his growth and understanding, his progressive path through the experience of apprehension of eternal truths. And the other thing, too, the pragmatic side, the subjective side of that, is look what the program does. It produces Orthodox saints in huge numbers. If you work the program, if you're healed, nothing else does that. What else produces an Orthodox saint that looks like that? That's objectively verifiable. There was a real person, St. Isaac here. There was a real St. John. There was a real, all of these, St. Just Popovich. But in his writings, with the rare understanding based on experience, he traces the process of healing, purification of man's organs of knowledge, his growth in understanding, his progressive path through the experience of the apprehension of eternal truth. And the philosophy of St. Isaac the Syrian, based on the experience of grace. Oh, that's divine energy. Can't experience grace as a created hologram. So, orthodoxy again for the win, and only orthodoxy. And the methodology of the Orthodox theory of knowledge have found one of the most perfect expressions. And he goes on, I shall now sketch this theory, or gnoseology. There it is. That is a perfect, complete, best you can ever get. It's that or nothing. And if you don't get it, you're not seeing the bigger picture. Like, you're not really, you got to go back to square one. Amen. Yeah, the Serbian saints are great. Yeah, remember this is the exchange between St. Augustine and St. Ambrose of Milan. Augustine was doing it before he converted. He was the court orator. A Thomas well, truth, your property. And St. Ambrose scolds the young Augustine. No, Augustine, truth is a person. It's Jesus Christ. Why is 2,000 years long? Probably because God has a number of people he has in mind that need to hear the gospel. That's why. I don't know why that's. Yeah, he's the way, the truth, and the truth and the life. Truth will set you free. The unbridgeable gulf, the same thing as physics refers to quantum gap. No. It's not waiting, it's certain things need to be fulfilled. And everybody has the gospel, right? Everybody has to be given a chance to. So it's not just like God's waiting up there, like, well, just everything's in its right place. The way, the governments and different things, how each person is being able to hear and react to. Could be another 100, 200, 500 years. Why would you want Christ to return when things are not in their right place yet? And furthermore, why are you worrying about Christ returning when you're gonna die before you, like, it's, do you see it's a distraction? Oh Lord, just take me, Jesus, come back and take me home. It's like, you know what's definitely gonna happen in your lifetime? Your death time. Like, I'd be working on and focusing on that and quit worrying about when Jesus is coming back. And the general resurrection and the recapitulation of nature. It's like, do you see that's a distraction? Who cares how much longer it's going to take? You're going to die within your lifetime, and you better get yourself right. I mean, there's different. We try not to read too much into the prophecies are not meant to be fortune telling, right? Um, they're to keep us watchful of the times, um, and pay attention. But the other thing too is the reason why, and this goes back to the why isn't he coming back? It's because man plays a part in this story. It isn't you go get him, Jesus, you come back, you do it all. God has asked man, right, his fellow co-worker, to co-work with him to restore paradise, to preach the gospel, to establish the kingdom. And so the time depends on us when Jesus comes back. So not only do things still need to come to place, we do know that the one who restraineth, right, evil. Do you know that the liturgy and the faith of the faithful and the prayers restrains the Antichrist from coming back? It's like a balance, right? It pushes the evil and the manifestation of that down. And when people's faith, when we close down liturgies, when we stop praying, the faith of a country or culture at a particular time goes down, guess what? You get antichrists. You rise. You see this in the Soviet times, Bolshevism. They just start destroying the church. In these different epochs, the Antichrist could have come at that particular time. Those things could have been, they were fulfilled. The Antichrist would have come, the great apostasy, and then the Christ would come back, right? Throw the devil in the pit. When he comes back with the sound of the trumpets of the angels, that's it, it's over. The devil's defeated, and all are raised. And those things have to happen because they're written, yeah. But they could happen based on man's lack of faith and the rising of the Antichrist. There's many Antichrists, but there is going to be one that comes, and there will be a great apostasy, great deception. So the reason why it's taking so long is because man is pushing back the Antichrist, right? Still spreading the kingdom and the gospel. But at some point, there'll only be a few. And it says even the elect will be deceived. At that point, that'll be the end. That will be literally the end times. Even though we're in the end times, right? We're just getting closer. Yeah, God isn't passing away. Man plays a part in the time when the Antichrist comes back and when the end of the world will happen. Joseph, I just use JTB generally as I think I say in the paper a working definition. Does noetic knowledge fit that? Probably. I mean, as opposed to what? It's not a belief. I mean, it's certainly true. It's not a belief necessarily that, well, I formed it cognitively or something like that. You could say it's a belief of the heart. Is it justified? Of course, like, if, right, if the justification, then it seems, yeah. Who keeps texting me? Yeah, I think it's a type of mark of the beast. Like, I think there's like I think from my understanding, there will actually be a literal mark, but like the whole thing's a beast system. That's what I always say. I think Father Spirit and Bailey, who's over in the UK, has talked a lot about. All right, let's see. Any more super chats? No. Super chats. Oh, I have a perfect response to it. I would say before I answer your question, I'd throw it back on them. I would ask number one, what would it take for you to, and this is good to start off, what would it take for you to change your position on? If you're in a cult, somebody will be like, nothing. And be like, okay, then brush the dust off your feet and walk away. So I'd ask the person asking the question, what would it take to convince you that iconography is not contrary to the second commandment? That it isn't idolatrous, that it was accepted by the church? And most likely, what the person will probably do is respond nothing, some non falsifiable theory. So I wouldn't even talk to them at that point. Number two, I'd ask the person asking the question if they could give, let's see, Thursday, one second. Next, I'd ask them, yeah, give me a difference between what you think is veneration versus worship, and I guarantee you'll find nope. I'd ask them if they're asking about idolatry, I'd say define it, and I guarantee you're not gonna get any coherent. What the Bible says in the sixth, it's like no, that's begging. Like I'm asking you what it means. So it just shows their ignorance. Or I'd ask them, how do you think these disputes of whether something is a holy image worthy of veneration versus whether all images are idolatry, how do you think that's resolved in the church if you don't have any normative authority? How's that legally? Oh, it reduces to your own right of private judgment and subjectivism. Congratulations. That's another argument against you. 5, I'd ask them their epistemic and hermeneutical principles interpret because they're going to try to interpret scripture. Guess what? Oh, you're a modern secularist. All this comes out of Descartes, right? And all the stuff that comes in Protestant and nominalism and stuff like this, it all leads to atheism and higher textual criticism. Congratulations for the win, dude. Like, one second. I'd ask him also, why don't you explain to me what's intrinsically wrong with venerating or having images represent theological things? They're not going to give you an answer, so don't answer them. Like, I'd ask them to defend their interpretation of scripture where the Bible condemns images. They're not going to know what they're talking about. By the way, notice what's going on. It says graven images. That means carved, literally means carved three-dimensional images. What is that called? Statues. Now, why would God say that? This is why they have, like, if somebody's retarded and they can't read, why are we giving them a book to read to their own destruction? Like, that's what I don't get. No context. What were the ancient Hebrews doing? They were making idols and statues of what? A golden calf, right? And worshiping them. What is worship? They can't tell you, but it's treating something that it's the created as if it was uncreated. That's what they were doing. So what does God do? Don't make those unholy images. Then what does it do? Then it tells right after that how to make holy images. So these guys are idiots. Like, ask them about the apostolic canons and the oral tradition. They won't know anything. Those are the arguments, how we prove. Ask them to explain consensus paternum. Ask them if they've read Saint Theodore the Studite. Have they read all the canons of the Seventh Ecumenical Council, St. John of Damascus? Then why, if they haven't, if they're fundamentally retarded and don't know any of these, why are we going to spend this time trying to prove to them that icons aren't idols? It's like, go do your homework, grow up, right? Before we can even have a conversation about that. That's what I would say to you. And we have historical evidence. They were decorating the synagogues in which Christians were worshiping with holy images. Furthermore, if you're not an icon dual, you don't have correct soteriology, salvation. You can't have correct anthropology, Christology. That's why these people are heretics. They're not even Trinitarian and believers of Christ. Why do you think the Seventh Ecumenical Council says to be a Christian, you have to be a lover of icons? Because it means you have a false Jesus if you don't. You're not even hitting the same referent. So, ironically, they're actually idolaters. They create a phantasm of Christ that's not Christ in their own mind, and then they worship not the true Lord. They worship their own ideas that are anti-Christ. And there's an evil that you can pick up with. Why is it that Calvinists and the Reformed are some of the worst people to be around, even by Protestant standards? Even the rest of the Protestant sects can't stand them because they're evil. Like, they have an evil to them. Because they have this anti-Christ, and you can feel it. They're full of anger and hatred, and pride. And I remember as a Protestant, I'm like, they're the worst. Like, every Protestant realized that, like, ain't nobody want to be around Calvinists and Reformed people. Doesn't that tell you something? And their penal substitutionary atonement is a satanic doctrine. Like, yeah, what about the serpent too? Yeah, it's just countless examples. That's why I said the first question, what would it take? For a heretic, because that's not an intellectual problem, it's a spiritual issue of pride. No amount of evidence and arguments will commit. Everything is evidence for their position, nothing can be evidence against it. Because they're a heretic. Like, they're full of pride. Anyways, good. Yeah, they're actually idolaters and traditions of men. Oh yeah, I would love to see Mother Victoria and the Sisters of St. Barbara's Monastery. again, I gave a talk that it was really interesting. So there was a Uniate priest that was a grad from TAC, and I actually invited him. I gave a talk at St. Barbara's Monastery and invited him over, and I railed on Roman Catholicism. It was hilarious. Yeah, Father Moses was just there. I got off the phone with him a couple days ago. I was asking him how the trip was. All right, what else? X News. Oh, here's an interesting. Ah, what's up? I posted Jay Dyer's article on orthodoxy and the death penalty. It's on Patristic Faith. You can look it up. Um, Somebody wrote. I gotta approve the comment, but this is interesting. I want to share this with you before. I know it's pretty common held opinion that murderers, rapists, acts of treason, etc., deserve the death penalty above the state, but the same position to be held by the church in terms of taboo. There's no cause. No, I just provide an argument. Um, the church has never held that it's taboo. So you're talking to modern people who are influenced by modern ideas. I talked to Father Andrew about that. I'm like, this is crazy. Yes, I'm sorry. We have priests and even bishops that, for example, are ecumenists and say all kinds of wrong stuff. Say Origen is a saint. That's not what the church is. And people say cognitive consist. It's like, I mean, what would you say in the time of air? Like, there's no cognitive consistency. How do we know? It's like the death penalty is instituted by God Himself in the Old Testament. The power of the state to execute. It is codified in Saint Justinian, a saint, law. Canons are based on that the state has the right to execute, right? We have Saint John Chrysostom, plenty of saints. In fact, all we have is saints and fathers saying the state has the right, and not only is it codified into Saint Justinian's code, we have canons and all, saints and fathers all saying the state has a right to do that. And we have no saints and fathers saying the opposite. All we have is some modern examples right now of people saying it's taboo. Why are you listening to them? That's not how we know. You don't pick some modern priest or bishop who has erroneous ideas and liberal ideas to be like, well, I guess that's what the church said. It's like, So let's just get this clear. So all of the God of the Old Testament's wrong. So you're a Marcionite. All the saints and the fathers, the consensus paternum, the canons are wrong. Saint Justinian Code's wrong, but you as a modern who are bringing in ideas that are totally incompatible with orthodoxy. You're right, and everybody else. See what I mean? Why people are like confused about this, like, is just beyond me. Yeah, I think it's contra. Like, how can you be personally? Oh, has the authority? Yeah, versus. Yeah, it does seem contradictory. I don't know how you would get out of that. I don't. It's like the. You know what it reminds me? I'm not personally for abortion, but I think everybody has a right to. It's like, yeah, it does seem contradictory. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Rusty, great point. I was just going to bring up that point. Rusty says, I don't think any person in the history was anti-death penalty until the last 100 years. That's what I mean. It's like, it's such a natural institution, and in history, conscious of his throughout history in the polis, that it's weird that we're even bringing this up, even from like a secular point, like view. I'm looking at your comments. Hold on. And they reinterpret the word love. They're like, it's not loving. It's like, it is loving. They get a wonderful opportunity to repent. Like, when you know your death's approaching, like, there's a grace and gift in that. So not only lex talionis, right, and having justice, like, it's actually a loving act. It's the same loving act that God allowed us to die. We had our, I mean, think about it, the death penalty was instituted in the garden. Why? So the evil wouldn't become eternal. It's the same principle. If you have all the time to, oh, I could repent, I could change. It's almost similar to, it's like evil can just get worse. Like, oh, I have more time to change the road I'm on. Octavian 999. I know those people. I used to also be at their levels. Retardation. Glory to God, I am slightly less retarded now. Glory to God, yeah, that we're all getting less slightly retarded. Isn't that great? That's a great shirt, actually. I'm getting slightly less retarded thanks to God and Ortho each day. Matt Manning 499. I'm inquiring Ortho. Feel like I need to decide me work by myself. Um, every day the question of jurisdiction comes up. You don't need to worry about it. You're baptized in the Orthodox Church, not a jurisdiction. You need to find with the local parish what's a better fit. If you have a better pastor at the Go Arc, a better community, go with that. No pun intended. Go with Go Arc on that. If you're like, there's some weird issues at that parish, I think that this parish over here that happens to be Roko would be better, then go with that. But you don't need to choose jurisdictions. You need to choose a right parish. Yeah, good point, Rusty. They don't care about justice project with a utilitarian view. I brought this up in ethics. um analyzing these things, like how would a Kantian deontological ethicist interpret these things versus a consequentialist utilitarian. Yeah, there's something going on. Somebody's telling these OCA priests about orthodox, and I've seen, this is really says not just OCA. I've seen priests believe. Father Russell had a great retort back to another priest, because somebody came to the conference, and I don't even remember what jurisdiction this priest is, so it doesn't matter. And they're like, my priest said not to come, that this was a bad place, and Father Russell and Deacon Ananias and the organizers are bad people, and that I shouldn't come here. Father Russell, he came to me, asked me to talk, and I'm like, you should go talk to Father Russell. I'm like, he'll give you better advice than I do. You know what Father Russell said to this young guy? Ask your priest, have you ever been here? Have you ever spoken to Father Russell or Deacon Ananias or any of the clergy that... Oh, no. He hasn't? Oh, there's a name. So you're basing this on rumors? And there's a name for that. Slander. Is that what you encourage your parishioners? And it's so sad to see. This is what a lot of priests are seeing, like, they never investigate. They've never met any of us. They've never... Father Russell said there was somebody from Texas came up here. It must have been one of the weekends I was gone, probably serving another parish. They said, well, what they said's not even true at all. He says, what do they say? That this is a racist, white supremacist. And he was like, isn't that interesting? All you have to do is come and check. Yeah, you even have priests who are believing lies without checking facts or even knowing or meeting or even talking to any of the clergy up here. They'll be judged. As Father Turbo said, not even just Judgment Day, like, who's going to come to your aid when people lie about you and throw you under the bus, when you're like, that is a person who accepted lies and hearsays. That's a priest who's going to come save you and come to... Well, I'll vouch for, he always stood for the truth and would squash rumors, hearsay, slander. Be like, no, he was not. He was the priest that listened and spread it. I'd be like, nobody's going to come to your aid. Like, God have mercy on your soul. Like, that's sad. Like, and out of all people, like, there's less excuse for a leader of a church to do something like that. So this is going on with the like, so notice none of these people are saying, you know what the real problem is? Left, liberal, Skittles, women's ordination, feminism. Do any of these people call us out? Do any of these priests who are like, oh, no, it's young kids, men are the problem, ortho bros. That's the problem. It's like, do you even know what an ortho bro is? Like, what? No, I was just told that this is bad. I'm like, yeah, there's issues with ortho bro. Like, I got it. They're just young. Like, they're actually pretty easily healed. You know who's not? You know who doesn't change as easy? Democrats, liberals in the Orthodox Church. Why? Because they're progressives. I don't understand how anybody at this point could be like, oh, I could be Orthodox and vote Democrat. It's like, it's a Malthusian death cult, right? I'm not talking about, the morality of the individual politicians or something like that. I'm saying, what is the party platform? It's a mutilating cult of kids, diddlers, right? Weaponizing migration, right? Uh, Revolutionary spirit, violent murder, genocide of babies, Skittles, anti-natal. It's literally their platform. Do you think any priest can be like, well, the best you get is, well, both sides are bad, which is just lazy and cowardice. Like, if you're clergy and saying that, you're a coward. Oh, Pol Pot and the Salvation Army are both wrong. Yeah. Well, Burger King. What was the ones that I used? That's like saying, well, eating cyanide and Burger King are both bad for you. It's like, oh, I transcended politics. See, they're both bad, and I'm original. I'm the first person that ever thought that. Congratulations. I have no respect for you if you say, yes, we do transcend left, right, but there's a reason why more things is many problems that the conservatives and right have line up probably with orthodoxy than the left. Like, are you an idiot? Like, what's the matter with you? Means it's totally intellectually. It's not just cowardice. It's totally intellectually lazy. It's like I don't have to go down to the details to be like, yeah, one is systemically evil, right? The other one's just kind of retarded and stupid and has these various issues that I can critique. Well, I don't want to have to get down into the details, so I just be like, I just transcend. I'm not political. Well, I have no respect for you. How about that? Like, and I don't want to talk to you. You sound like a retard. Oh yeah, bummers. Too bad you can't come to the Athens in Jerusalem. Don't purchase the tickets to Athens, Greece, by the way, too. Be like, in Jerusalem. I got 2 tickets to Athens and Jerusalem. And nobody was there for the conference. I'm just gonna start telling people that if they say like, I'm not political and politics is belong. First of all, who told you politics does not belong to the church? I mean, obviously, we can see like how certain kind of Protestant churches on either side too. I would definitely say you have like the Skittles kind of Anglican Episcopalian on, and then you've got the kind of evangelitard uh MAGA. I even hate using that term MAGA. Trump kind of, yeah, obviously that's wrong. Like, but I mean, I always noticed that I was talking with Father Andrew. I'm like, do you ever notice it's only liberals in the Orthodox Church that say like that's political and they shouldn't be politics has no. Whereas people more on the right, conservatives and orthodoxy, they don't actually say that when the liberal stuff come out. They actually address it as a moral or theological error. They're not like this is politics. Politics has no, yeah, moral issues and theological that have political implications, right? Like, but I'm gonna just start telling people when they say that, I'd be like, I have nothing to say to you. You sound like a retard, and you're a coward. Like if you don't want to get into the details of. Now, by the way, I don't at church get into and talk to people about politics at all. Um, I'm not there to. But if somebody's having a general conversation, right, outside of kind of coffee hour or something like that. Like, I'll go into political theory. I don't mind doing that. Yes, councils used. We're not fideists. Like, that was clear from the reading of St. John Popovich. We actually believe in logos, logic, and reason and arguments. Many of the saints were philosophers and trained to reason well and think. And so, of course, that's gonna be part of. I mean, what would the opposite be? Just believe it because we said it. You got to use arguments. You have to argue for stuff. Well, we just did this magic formula and we did the gazoo with a chopped chicken head. And it lands on bailout. The Ecumenical Council says that we're going to have a bailout. What? Oh, I thought my wife, she was talking to the cats. So, if, yeah, like, of course you're going to use arguments. No more super chats? Did everybody just run out of money? I'm trying to get the money up to get a camera. Remember? Nothing. Remember when I used to do like I'm not talking until I get the next super chat? I won't do it, but it is kind of funny. It's just having fun. It's fun having fun with you guys. And I love how the liberals and left, they're actually connected to the Puritans. There's a moralizing. They'll criticize their opponents as an immoral. It's like, of course they're immoral. I thought that was a given. Like, we're not voting for candidates because their moral aptitude, but to get the job done and the platform, right? Like I think it was St. Paisius who said, who would be best for Christians? Not like, well, this person had sexual relations with. I'm sure they all are doing bad stuff like that. I hope that some of them they repent and do better, but why is the left's always like they're a bad, convicted rapist? No, he's not. Like, first of all, I mean, this is what's so frustrating about. It's not just this issue. It's with anything. There's legitimate critiques of the other position. Now make them. They're legitimate critiques of Trump. Quit with the stupid, made up stuff, like, because you just look like an idiot. And this came up the other day with something, a philosophical position. Like, there's legitimate critiques of this position, and they're not the ones you're providing, so you're just making yourself look like an idiot. But the left has this moral piety, like, oh, this is. Which is hilarious because it's like as if the people on your side are moral standards of. But that goes back to the Puritans. The liberals came out of the Puritans. And that's how we got Thanksgiving. My brother used to be married to this Irish girl. And in Ireland and the UK, they don't have Thanksgiving. She had no idea. The dinner table at Thanksgiving with the families and stuff, and she was like, "What's I don't understand this Thanksgiving." I'm like, "Well, it's when we came over here, and we crushed and colonized the pagan Indians." And they thanked us for it and they cooked us a meal, and she was like, really? I'm like, yep, that's how. Vane 499. I gave my brother Justin St. Tikhon prayer book. He's into Orthodoxy. Please pray to God he moves him. Oh yeah, God bless you. Good.
I can't, people are so gullible. What was the other day? Like I came up with something. People were like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, really." That's exactly how the history of the. I'm just gonna start telling two people when they ask, like, tell me like stuff that I know false. That's just totally untrue. But like, yep, that's exactly. You're right. Please argue, like, even argue with people anymore. I'm just gonna tell everybody they're right. Yeah, that's exactly the right position. It's amazing you got that. Yeah, Puritan and proto-communist, like they're that's where the left really comes out of, like liberals in the use in the United States. Checks in the mail. All right, what else? Um, all right, classes are set up. I need to pack. I was asking Father Russell what color vestments he was going to take, so I need to decide what color vestments. Um, what other questions? Yeah, before we end the stream. Won't see you for another week and a half. So get the questions in. Oh, the Protestant Reformation is worse. I mean, because after the 1050, there was still an ability. Things hadn't gotten so bad that they couldn't have been reconciled. Um, I think when you get to the Council of Florence and they start doubling down, and then later on dogmatizing, it gets impossible. But um, theologically, where Rome was at was a lot closer than where Protestants are. So I'd say in that sense, it's worse. Oh, that's a good question. The Jews converted when Christ, would the temple have been gotten rid? Church made into a church. They're going to be grafted in. We are most fathers believe that uh, the apostate rabbinical Jews will at some point in the future convert in the end times. All right, other questions. Is it your understanding that the physical Eucharist is the subject of worship?
That's a hard. I don't think it's an either or. The worship is given to the Trinity. Christ is truly present, invisibly, but truly, really, in the Eucharist. So it's no longer normal bread and um, but we don't have Eucharistic adoration because this came up. I asked Father Russell, and this came up in this. Some people going through seminary asking, "Do you worship the Eucharist, or do you worship Christ under the form of right?" While still saying he's really present there, but you got to. It's the the seminary professors were saying, no, we don't worship the Eucharist. We worship Christ, and therefore through Christ the Trinity through the Eucharist, even though he's present there. It's tricky language, and I think what they're trying to do, and Father Russell said the same thing too, they're trying to separate it from Eucharistic adoration. And they're saying, you know, it's kind of a deviation if we worship the Eucharist. It's like, no, you worship Christ, who's in the Eucharist truly. And by worship of Christ, the worship of Christ is also offered to the Trinity. So that's what. But they're very adamant to be very careful not to say. And I don't know. You might be able to find some fathers that, used worshiping the Eucharist. I don't know what the translations are on that, but it's probably not precise. So I'm deferring to the seminary professors, the seminaries, and Father Russell. It's like, no, we don't say we worship the Eucharist. We worship Christ and the Trinity, Christ who's truly present in the Eucharist. So it's kind of through to separate it from Eucharistic adoration. That's beyond that. I don't know what other language we use. Doesn't if uh, a communicant partakes of the Eucharist and they come home, um, isn't the non-Orthodox blessed by that too? So the child in the womb's just in a more intimate, right? And they're being nourished by, but they're not partaking, right? We don't do blood transfusions uh, as a means of partaking of the Eucharist, right? So it can affect in different degrees going out. But think about even blood transfusion. That's a good. It's like, does that mean the person receiving a blood transfusion, somebody that communed, um, is benefiting from? Yeah, but they're not partakers of. Partaking is to eat with the eat of this, not absorb it through. What partaking means, absorb through. Yeah, but they're still affected by it. Anybody's affected by. But we're not communing the baby because they're not eating and partaking of the. But good question. All right. One last question and then we're out of here because it's almost noon. Kali Ma. Sacred Heart Worship.
All right. A unicorn child? How many unicorn children are there? What icons? Do we consider those icons to have any value? Did I miss something? Yeah, you can't have Sacred Heart icons. It's crazy. Yeah, absolutely not. It's a different Jesus. Historian Jesus is a different Jesus than that. Would you bring? Yeah. Don't mix. I never get this. Why people always want to know if they can bring in stuff from other faiths into their lives and orthodoxy. Like, don't do it. Not even once. There's nothing that orthodoxy is lacking, furthermore, that you need to bring in to fix. And second of all, it's contaminated with error. Like, don't bring disease and error into your home. Hey, is the person in the philosophy chat in the Orthodox asking about personal knowledge and noetic? Is that the same person who was in R? Or is it just coincidental that that person is asking the same questions? Yeah, Mormon Jesus is the creepiest. All right, that's it. That's a wrap. God bless you guys. I'll be a week and a half before I see you. Pray for safe travels for me. And I'll miss praying with you guys. Bro, keep you in my prayers. And may a blessed rest of the week. And Lord, keep you and preserve you until I see you again. God bless.